This is TWiT.
This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. 1/3 of information security jobs require a cybersecurity certification. While organizations are hungry for cybersecurity talent, the cyber skills gap grows daily. The average salary for cybersecurity specialists is $116,000. ACI Learning's programs can get you certified. To maintain your competitive edge across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness, visit go.acilearning.com/twit.
So maybe you heard about the whole Samsung saga, Samsung faking moonshots. And, a couple of years ago, this happened, right? Like I remember we may have even had the author of the Input article on when he...
Is that Ray?
Yeah, Ray, when he wrote about it with the S21 Ultra. But anyways, the idea was back then when you held the S21 Ultra up and you took a night shot of the moon, with the amazing Samsung space zoom, right? 100x space zoom that when you use it on anything that you want to see clearly, it's amazing that it can extend that far, but it's by no means a usable photo. But Samsung touted, and people realized when you shot the moon, even though the moon was very far away, obviously, even though you're using space zoom, which brings it closer, somehow those images ended up really clear. And it was like, okay, well, what's going on here? Obviously, this camera is not picking up that much information. Samsung at the time explained, well, it's the AI that offers, they said, a detail enhancing function by reducing blurs and noises. That was kind of part of their explanation. And, I don't know how much that went to convince other people. I kind of walked out of that situation. I emerged from that situation just kind of assuming that Samsung was doing more than they were letting on, that they were obviously doing something to like bring an image into the experience that, it's not merely like touching up an image that exists. Like it just looked far too sharp for me to ever believe that they were taking the information that was readily available from that one photograph and sharpening it, and voila, all that missing information was there. Well, someone on Reddit tried a little setup with the S23 Ultra. This is 2 years later, right? This was just this last week. The Redditor created a blurry image of the moon, displayed it on a screen, and then photographed that picture with the S23 Ultra. So the photo began as a blurry photo. There was never any sharp information to begin with, right? It was just blurry. Took the picture with the S23 Ultra. The resulting photo at the end of it brought back all of the missing detail. Is that the end photo?
That's the first photo.
No, I think
because
that's
I have to open
the starting photo.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's not what I saw.
Hats off to Samsung. You take that.
Holy cow. Yeah. Okay. So this was the first photo. If you go next, I think you'll see. Well, there's a next button. I think. Yeah. If you go, then you'll see a piece of pizza. No, go back to the.
Yes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see. Go to the article because the article or the there's a Verge article that has a lot of this stuff in it. But anyways, the point being, it's okay. You can just come back to the white. There we go. Okay, so that's the resulting photo. But meanwhile, the photo that started on the display was very, very blurry. Like he intentionally blurred it. So there was no extra information there. If it was Samsung's, explanation, I think this is the video of the actual process happening. That was it. So he is pointing the camera at the display that has the blurry photo on it. He takes the picture. It thinks for a second, and then it replaces the image with this pretty sharp looking, considering, where it began, photo.
Right.
If we were actually taking that of a moon in the sky, it might be believable that there was some extra information there and Samsung's AI was...
No, it totally looks like it's just replacing it with a photo that's almost the same size.
Yeah, well, and
100%.
Same angle, like it matches the angle, which,
Yeah.
I mean, is probably not that difficult to do because the moon's always in the same place.
Superimposing a texture on a yeah.
So superimposing is what Huawei was accused of a couple of years ago with their own, moon algorithm. But what like Samsung and themselves, they did post like a post on, to be fair, on the Korean Samsung forum. So a lot of people outside of Korea probably hadn't seen that post until, this whole debacle. So basically, what they said they were doing is when your scene optimizer feature is turned on in the camera settings, like it's recognizing that you're trying to take a photo of the moon. And then through a very complicated series of algorithms, machine learning, etc., it's basically, something like super resolution, like it's trying to add detail or like enhance the detail of what you're trying to take a photo of. But basically, like the whole controversy boils down to like what exactly is a photo. And I think like totally the Marquez Brownlee video did a really good job like talking about, are you actually like are any of the photos you take actually real?
Right.
Like, if you were to take your 100x zoom Samsung camera and point it at a sign that's like, 100 yards away, and you can clearly see with your eye what that sign should be saying, but clearly optically, even if you zoom in 100x, it still looks like a blurry mess. But then after you take the photo, it's like clearly sharpened up and something that's legible.
There's
right?
no
You
detail
believe
in that
you
photo.
you don't think it's faking the photo, right? Like what you're trying to see. So the camera is producing something that you think it should be showing you.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically what's happening here. Like it knows you're trying to take a photo of the moon. The moon is tidally locked to the Earth, so like no matter where you're looking at it from, depending on the phase, you're going to have the same direction of the moon facing you. And so the details that you expect to be there, you would expect to be there in a photo of the moon. Right. So like, is it really faking a photo of the moon? Is that a fake image? Like it's kind of blurry.
Yes.
I mean, it's no pun intended. It blurs the line between what is a real photo and what is not.
Well, in this era of computational photography, which we are steeped in,
But
Adam,
I bet you can't do it for anything other than the moon.
What's that?
Can it do things like this to anything else other than the moon? That's the thing.
It does this kind of processing for other photos in different ways, right? Like obviously, the moon is a very specific example for the reasons that you're talking about, Mishaal. Just 5 minutes ago, you were showing your son, Adam, and a photo with a fake blurred background. That photo didn't exist like that when you shot the footage, but yet it did after the fact because there was processing that got it there. And we've largely accepted that as a taker as well as a viewer. Like when I view those photos, I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, that wasn't shot with a real DSLR. This is faked. I am offended. Like I'm like, okay, well, that was the artistic kind of thing.
But that's like removing detail and not adding.
Are you
detail.
making a slippery slope argument there, Jason? Because it sounds like you're making a slippery slope argument.
What do you mean? Well, explain. What do you mean? I mean,
so if fake bokeh is acceptable, then the next step beyond that is fake bokeh around two subjects, and then the next step beyond
fake
that
detail on the moon.
Is filling in the blanks on a sign that's 100 feet away, and then the next step after that is fake details on the moon. So
Fair enough.
Once
Where
and
do you
then
draw the
after
line?
that you have the fall of modern society, and it's all because we decided that bokeh
it's all
on the
because
picture was
Samsung
okay.
couldn't allow you to take a blurry picture of the moon. Well, where would you draw the line then? Or is there a line to be drawn for you?
No, I say I'm all for the downfall of society. I say go chaos. Let's do this. No, no. I mean, I don't. I honestly don't care. If I might be totally honest, I really don't care. Oh, look, it's the
hill
moon.
that we
It's a
want to
nice
die
picture of the
on?
moon. I know what the moon looks like. This looks like that. I'm good.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. Completely. It's like,
Me,
Mishaal.
yes. Sorry.
No,
For me,
go.
I think the line for what would be fake would be like you're taking a photo and the end result is not at all based on any actual optical capture from the cameras. It's just replacing it with like a static already generated image. And I think that would be like 100% fake.
Looks like that's exactly what
It
it's
would
doing, though.
It would be like if you went to Disney World and your family stood next to Goofy and someone took a picture of you standing next to Goofy, and then when you walked up to them, they just handed you a picture of Goofy with not the family. That would be like, here's your picture, enjoy. And you're like, this isn't at all what we just did. And
Thank you for standing with Goofy.
We filled in the details for you. That's yeah. So I mean, like, I agree with Mishaal. As long as it's based in some type of optical reality, then yeah, sharpen away. It's all good.
I can understand both sides on it, though. I really can. I could see why people would be offended that I took a picture of the moon and suddenly it swapped in this thing, and I mean, in this case, the guy took a picture of a intentionally blurry round object that was obviously the moon. There's enough I think this is at the heart of what you're saying, Mishaal, if I'm understanding correctly. There's enough of a pattern on that round object, that round bright object that he took a photo of, to show that it is the moon. Like, that pattern exists. It didn't have to be all the detail, but the pattern is there. And Samsung has a system to sharpen that pattern, and they used it. And is that replacing the picture you took with another picture? Is it somehow with AI taking a known image of the moon in that particular phase and, I don't know, morphing those features around the photo that you put there, so it's not a straight up replacement, but it's kind of like a merging of the two? And again, like, where do you draw the line between what's acceptable and not in a world where we have really kind of opened up to computational photography as being an okay thing? I can understand Samsung saying, well, that's all we're doing here too. But I can also understand people being upset and being like, yeah, but you're telling me it's something that it's not. Is Samsung being honest?
So, I mean, one thing that I did in reaction to this Reddit post was it was an experiment that I've been trying to do for years, actually, and I've never been able to pull it off. I took a light diffuser. For photography, you hold it up and the light can pass through. It's kind of like basically a translucent white thing. And I put it up on a shelf over here. I put a flashlight behind it, and I stood across the room. Because, it basically just made a little white dot, which is basically what the camera sees. Right. I stood across the room and tried to take a picture of it to see if it would superimpose the moon on there, and it did not do it. So Samsung's got that going for it.
Yeah, they were smart enough to think about the fact that in the millions upon millions of photos that are ever taken with their cameras, there might at some point be a sharp light that resembles the moon somewhere, and we better not be superimposing moon photos on that sharp light. Can you imagine all the weird little places in pictures where the moon suddenly appears?
I feel like too, like they could be like faking how blurry the camera really sees it to begin with, to make it look like the camera's doing a better job at making it doing it. Like that's easy to do. It's super trickery. It's no brainer.
Yeah. I can see that. But, if Cliff's still watching, Cliff, what I want you to do is I want you to take a picture of a parking lot and superimpose the moon over every lamppost in there, and then post it online so we can all see it, because that would be amazing. Cliff's a graphic artist. So.
And co-host of your podcast.
And co-host of the podcast, benefitofadoubt.com.
There we go. All right.
Shameless.
We can put this to bed. There is no more controversy. We've solved it. We figured it out. Every manufacturer can now fake the moon on their phone, and it's okay. There we go.
And it's fine with the All About Android podcast.
I think.
Not me, though.
Guaranteed we're going to get some email on this. I guarantee you.
Yeah, but Burke, you don't count.
That's true.
You count in my eyes, Burke.